What's going on, everybody? My name is Hussein the Brain, and these are my NFL DFS picks for week 2. We're concentrating on DraftKings, GPPs. We're usually doing contrarian picks and high upside picks, and last week was a crazy week, but the video overall was a success. I did put some really bold, really risky picks, and at the end of the day, there were some misses with that video, obviously, but there were some major hits. And alone, if you just had Debo Samuel, you should have cashed in any GPP. And that was the case with me. I had Debo Samuel in 2 entries and both cashed. And this one was a huge heartbreaker. Trust me, guys, I've been on this for years when it's like, oh, I wish I had one guy and this and that. And I finally cashed out big last year, really big on DraftKings. And it really was. So when I say it was close, trust me, it was really close. Aaron Jones absolutely shocked me, and Jerry Jeudy was out. Other than that, this was a pretty fire lineup, and I think it would have cashed big, maybe 10,000 or more, because Jerry Jeudy was looking pretty good. He got injured, and Aaron Jones, huge shocker. But I'm also showing you this lineup here in the big GPP, the main slate last week, because I want to show you that you can do unique stacks. It's stacking with a running back is very difficult and doesn't work out usually, but as you can see, I did a contrarian Russell Wilson stack and it worked. I stacked Gerald Everett. Hey, I also got lucky with this one. Gerald Everett somehow scored. I think he only touched the ball twice last game, and he scored. He got in, so hey, that worked out. And then of course Tyler Lockett went absolutely off, putting up nearly 30 fantasy points, and DK Metcalf had a very mediocre game. So, yeah, it was really close. And, man, other picks, avoiding Callaway, avoiding Brandon Ayuk, going with Deontay Harris on the Saints, going with Juwan Johnson, that crazy recommendation. That even worked. He got 2 touchdowns. So, glad to see last week's picks were at least decent. Let's move on to this week. Lots of quarterbacks you can pick from. I'm just going to highlight one that sticks out to me, and you know what? When one quarterback really pops off the screen and I really like him, it might not be the best contrarian pick. But this week I'm going a little bit easier on the contrarian picks and punt plays, and I don't know. I'm feeling a lot more calm this week. Last week's video was just bonkers. Glad it worked out though. And that guy, that one quarterback I like, is Joe Burrow, 5,800 going against the Bears. Joe Burrow can run. The Bengals are going to throw the ball every single game. So basically every single game is a good game script for Joe Burrow. He's easy to stack. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. He stands out. I feel like he's got a high floor. He's got a decent ceiling and a great price. So maybe it won't be too contrarian since it popped off the page like that. To me, just was bright colors. I'm like, hey, Joe Burrow. But still, I'm going to definitely have him in at least one entry. Let's go to running backs. I think Derrick Henry could have a big bounce back game, but we're going to be focusing more on the players that aren't so obvious. By the way, we are looking at DraftKings, the main slate for week 2, focusing on tournaments, GPPs, the big contests. Going down to the 6,000 range, the low 6,000 range, we got Najee Harris going against the Raiders. Don't think he has a ton of upside. He's going to be very touchdown dependent, but because the Steelers O-line sucks, right? I don't think he's going to be getting much more than 3-4 yards per carry. Maybe he does this game, but as a whole, I'm just assessing Najee Harris this season. He's going to be good. Maybe not the most upside. But 6,300 against the Raiders. And how many points did he get last week? 5.9. That's why I kind of like him. I don't know if a lot of people will pick him. Ezekiel Elliott's actually cheaper than Najee Harris. I think he's going to do just fine this week. Priced at 6,200. Could be a little bit chalky, though. Who I like even more is David Montgomery. I guess we're targeting this Bears-Bengals game. 6,100. That's super cheap. The game script should be even better, or not even better, but the last game script was not good against the Rams. The Bears were just getting whooped pretty much the entire game. I mean, they were doing some things, but the Rams clearly were going to win the game from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. It seemed pretty obvious. And David Montgomery still managed 100 rush yards, a touchdown, only got 16 carries. So maybe that number goes up, and the Bengals defense not as good as the Rams defense. Good price for Monty. And I think the one I'm most excited about, 6,100, Chris Carson. Absolutely no competition behind him. Rashad Penny's hurt. I mean, he wouldn't have gotten involved anyways much as a running back. But pretty similar numbers with David Montgomery, right? 16 carries, nearly 100 yards. So very similar. And I like this matchup going against the Titans. Titans suck. And I do expect the Titans to put up some points. So it could be a little bit of a shootout, a little bit of an up-tempo game. Let's get some Chris Carson touchdowns. One guy I didn't want to talk about, but I don't know, because it's a bit risque, is Eli Mitchell. I love him. I'm going to put him in some entries. I'm starting him in regular fantasy football. I'm going to do it, but I know that I could be wrong. It's not an ego thing. I love Eli Mitchell. I've always been a fan of Eli Mitchell. I'm going to start him, and I'm rooting for him, and I'm hoping that I'm right. I also know that this is Shanahan, and this honeymoon phase, this romanticizing of Eli Mitchell being the workhorse of the Niners could end by week 6. It could end right now as I'm recording this video. I know that is a very possible outcome. It could happen. So if I'm doing multiple entries, like a lot of entries into a GPP, which I didn't do a lot last week, but I might this week, I'm going to be swapping them out. I'm going to be doing nearly the same entry and swapping out 2 players, and that's going to include Eli Mitchell. I'm going to probably swap him out with Trey Sermon. One thing, we're never certain with what the Niners are going to do, and Shanahan, especially with his running backs. But one thing I am going to state is that I truly believe that JaMycal Hasty will be the number 3 running back. And I definitely could be wrong about that as well. But that's, I can't just go with a bunch of ifs and maybes. Like, I have to fade players. I have to do something, right? I have to make some kind of decisive decision. And so I think it's going to either be Eli Mitchell to be the main running back for the Niners week 2, or Trey Sermon. And so if I put Eli Mitchell in 5 lineups, let's say, I'm going to put Trey Sermon in 2 lineups and swap them out. And that's how I'm going to have some extra entries. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Eli Mitchell's 5,000, Trey Sermon's 4,600, so they can easily be swapped out. It's only 400 difference if you're doing multiple entries. Okay, chalky. Josh Jacobs is out, so Kenyon Drake, 4,900. He's going to be super chalk. Best to avoid this. I mean, I don't know. I guess might not be super chalk because he's going against the Steelers. Terrible matchup for him. But he's going to be a little bit chalky. He's going to get his targets. He's going to be okay. But I don't think he has a ton of upside. Price is great, though. Great value, great price. Not ideal for tournaments. But like I said, because the matchup is bad, he might not be as chalky as I just thought like 20 seconds ago. Ronald Jones, I'm going for it. I'm actually putting my name behind this guy's name, and I'm saying I think he's the guy. I'm so lucky I didn't play GPP on the Thursday night showdown, because I would have had Ronald Jones in at least 1 or 2 entries, and he would have completely demolished them for me in a bad way. He would have ruined them. He would have spoiled them. I think he's going to be back. I think this game script is all Rojo all the way. The Bucks game and the Packers game are the 2 big blowouts. It's what it's slated to be, 2 most lopsided games. And I think it's going to be Rojo, man. He's fresh. He's ready to go. And hopefully he'll get some carries. 4,800 going against the Falcons, by the way. What else we got? Ooh. Here's a nice one here. Here's a nice one. Nyheim Hines. Look at how many targets this man got. Very quiet. He's been doing some work. 8 targets, 6 receptions, 9 carries. We know he's a decent runner. We know he's a great pass catcher. And guess what? The Colts have no pass catchers. We have 2 more wide receivers on the Colts questionable this week. Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman are both questionable. Let's say one of them misses the game. Oh my God. So we got Zach Pascal being the number 1 wide receiver. T.Y. Hilton's out. Jonathan Taylor hasn't caught too many balls so far in his NFL career. And Nyheim Hines is an amazing receiver. So also game script could be a thing. I think the Rams are going to just crush it with their wide receivers and put up points one way or another. And Nyheim Hines could come in for a lot of plays as the pass catching back if the Colts are playing catch up. So I absolutely love this one. And we're going to need a touchdown for him to cash. All right, next guy. We talked about Trey Sermon. I like Javonte Williams. Let's go with him at 4,400 going against the Jags. Actually was an even split. And if I'm not, we'll look that up right. If I'm not mistaken, there really wasn't a big difference between Javonte and Melvin Gordon, except for that one big run at the end that Melvin Gordon had. But as far as snaps, it was 50-50. And I don't see why it wouldn't be 50-50, if not more Javonte Williams this week. Against the Jags, both running backs could go out. You can even start both if you're that crazy. I know that kills your upside, but against the Jaguars, it might be worth doing something weird and crazy like that because nobody else is going to do something like that. And so it's not about picking contrarian players necessarily. It's about submitting contrarian unique lineups. And if you put 2 Broncos running backs in the same lineup, that's going to make you really contrarian. But I am warning you, I do know what that means. You are crushing your upside and you have to get super lucky. You have to basically say the Jaguars run defense and the Jaguars defense against running backs will be the absolute worst this year. It's a pretty big, bold statement, but you know that could be true. You know the Jags could allow the most fantasy points to running backs this year. It very well could happen. So that might be something you want to do. And, that's just something I thought of right now, but I have done that in the past. I didn't get first place with it, but I think it was starting 2 Patriots. Actually did it twice, both with the Patriots. So I started 2 Patriots running backs several years ago. I remember I called Her Fantasy Football on Sirius XM, and I was a guest on that show. And I was like, look, here's a contrarian for you. And I picked 2 running backs. I forgot who it was, probably LeGarrette Blount and whoever else was, maybe 2015 or I don't know. Was that Blount? I don't know, but it was 2 Patriots running backs. It was against the Jaguars, and they both scored touchdowns. So it was both good, and that lineup wasn't in the green. It did cash. And then I actually won $1,000 on DraftKings in a showdown when I picked 3 Patriot running backs against the Jets. I picked Brandon Bolden and James White and Sony Michel, something like that. And all 3 did okay. I know that's crazy. And I got 5th place in a third of it. So came really close to getting whatever it was, $10,000 or $5,000. It cashed. That lineup alone cashed $1,000. So the 2 times I've done it, it has cashed. And so, hey, this might be the chance. And let's just look at Melvin Gordon really quick. I wanted to do that just to see. So that was a 70-yard run. Wow. So yeah, if we take that back, it's definitely about the same as Javonte Williams, if not worse. And I know I don't want to do ifs and buts and whatnot, but if this went like that. But look, the fact is it was a 50-50 split, and it was just one big run that Melvin got that makes this look sexy. Oh my God, a 70-yard run. It was at the very end of the game too, I think. Oh man. All right. So I have one guy. We do have a guy, minimum price club, 4,000 club, right? And it's a pretty good one. I'm also excited about this guy. Kenny Gainwell going against the Niners. If Miles Sanders re-injures, I think does he have an ankle injury? I forget. Something. It's not really, he should be fine, but I'm just saying if anything were to happen to Miles Sanders or if he gets stuffed, Kenny Gainwell could be the pass catching back. He only got 3 targets week 1, but that is promising for such a young, inexperienced player. 9 attempts, 3 targets, and we saw in week 1 DeAndre Swift lead all running backs in targets. I think he got 11 targets against the 49ers. Both running backs were successful, surprisingly, against the 49ers. And so, yeah, at this price, it's super dirt cheap. Absolutely love it as a punt. If you need to squeeze that in, you're like, oh man, I only have like 4,100 and I need a running back. Kenny Gainwell. There you go. Okay, for wide receivers, what do I always say? Lots of options. Lots of options. All right, so we got Julio Jones. Could be a huge bounce back game against the Seahawks. I'm not a fan of the Seahawks defense this week, by the way. People are talking this and that. Look, I'm not a fan of the Seahawks defense. Just to be clear, Julio Jones, I do like him this week against the Seahawks. 6,300. Come on, Julio. I know you still got it, bro. This one should be very obvious. Probably going to be somewhat chalky. Allen Robinson, great matchup going against the Bengals. Should be great. High floor, high ceiling. And Mike Evans, I don't know if it's going to be week 2, week 3, or week 4, but that 30-point game is coming, ladies and gentlemen. Could be this week against the Falcons. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe. He's priced 6,100, by the way. Allen Robinson was 6,200. Now we're moving on way down the list. We have Slim Reaper. And let's talk game script here. Niners are favored to win by about 3 points. Somewhat of a high score, not too high a scoring game, but some more higher scoring than average is slated to be. So a little bit of a shootout, not a huge shootout, but a little bit of a shootout. And Eagles trailing by 3 points. Niners, I think, are pretty much elite across the board in every phase of their team. You got D-line, they got O-line, they got offense, they got good coach. I think the only thing they're missing are cornerbacks. They're awful. Pass defense will struggle. Jason Verrett injury will cause a chain reaction, right? There's about from the past 1 or 2 years, there's like 2 or 3 corners that could be missing, including Richard Sherman. So no Sherman, obviously. No Jason Verrett. And this is going to trickle down, right? This is going to bring in a safety to play cornerback on some plays. This is going to mean that the number 5 corner, number 4 corners have to, defend a legit receiver out there. And there's 2 tight ends on the Eagles that play a lot, Ertz and Gott. So it's just going to cause a lot of problems. And what I'm trying to say, as long as Jalen Hurts can make some reads, there's always going to be somebody open on every single play. He just has to make that right read. It's always going to happen. And Devontae Smith, he's got the speed, he's got the talent. They're going to have to set up plays for Devontae Smith. I think they're going to give him the ball. And with this price, I absolutely like it. He had a really good game last week, but maybe just a little bit under nothing too alarming where everyone was talking about him. So maybe you don't get huge ownership, high ownership with Devontae Smith. This is a great one. Speaking of ownership, I think we're going to be able to get this guy at a great price, at great ownership. Jerry Jeudy is out, and the training wheels are probably broken and been taken off Courtland Sutton. He is the number 1 option in that offense. He got over 1,100 yards just 2 years ago without a quarterback. Now he's got very good quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. Yeah, I think Teddy Bridgewater is very good all of a sudden. I do. And I think he's helping even Drew Lock step up his game. So even if Drew Lock were to come in, I think Sutton could have a lot of success. And, man, going against the Jaguars, magic things can happen, man. A lot of good things can happen against the worst team in the league. By the way, 5,200, Courtland Sutton. I like him. So if the Dolphins can slow down Diggs, or even if they can't, I like Cole Beasley. His price is 4,600. What is he, like half the price of Diggs? 13 targets. Look at this. 13 targets, 8 catches, and it was looking bad. Josh Allen looked horrible. This was a low-scoring poop fest between the Bills and the Steelers. I'm not trying to say the game was bad or anything, but as far as putting up a lot of points and fantasy points, it was a bad game for that. It was no shootout. It was the opposite of a shootout. It was a defensive game for both sides. And I think the Bills are going to score more points this game against the Dolphins. Now, Dolphins D is good, but maybe they focus on stopping Diggs. There's just so many ways that Cole Beasley can score, right? He can score with volume. He can score with a touchdown. He can do well if they decide to shut down Diggs. He's very hard to cover because he runs a lot of underneath route. He's very hard to double team, is what I'm saying, in the slot when running those slot routes, those under routes. Yeah, I guess the argument against him would be Dolphins D is solid and he's not a big touchdown guy. So I guess those are some decent arguments. But at this price, I mean, it's hard not to at least reach his value. So I do like him. I think the price is so dang cheap, man. So cheap that he's going to be worth it. We were off Callaway last week. I didn't hate him or anything, but I was just saying, look, he's going to be heavily owned in a lot of entries. He's so cheap. And I think this week he's more expensive. And he was absolute dud last week, but hey, he's not going to be defended by anybody who's good. Last week it was Jair Alexander. He's not on the Panthers. So I love Marquez Callaway for $4,200, more expensive than last week, and he was a bust last week. Here we go. Here's his price. It was $3,400. So he's $800 more expensive, and he only put up 2 points. Absolutely love him. I don't know what his ownership was last week. I don't think I picked him in any entries just to be more contrarian. It's going to be lower this week, I'm pretty sure. Like I said, he was a bust and he's more expensive, so I don't see how he's going to be more popular in GPPs. Absolutely love him against the Panthers. And I don't really have anybody that's in the 3,000 club, but just to keep the theme going, I am going to give you one cheap punt, and that's Donovan Peoples-Jones. We know that Odell Beckham is out for sure, and Schwartz might be out as well. I believe he's questionable. So that would open up some targets for Rashad Higgins and Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now, this is purely a punt. I don't know what this is. I just want to give you a minimum price guy in case you really were looking for one. Because the last guy I mentioned was $4,200, and this guy is $3,000. I'm purely mentioning it because he is minimum price. Moving on to tight ends, I think it's George Kittle season, man. I really have a lot of faith in him this week. Tight ends are almost impossible to predict, but the price is not that horrible, $6,400. I mean, it's not great or anything, but I think he could be the best tight end this week. I think so. We got Noah Fant. Doesn't take a genius to figure that out. Nothing special. $4,200. Jerry Jeudy's out going up against the Jags. Broncos should be able to do some things. Now, okay, I did say I didn't have a lot of stupid picks or anything, but I got one for you. I got one crazy, stupid. Is this minimum price? No, tight end's at $2,500. So he's not even minimum price. Okay, he's not even minimum price. Minimum price for tight end is $2,500, but this is basically minimum price, and that's CJ Uzomah. It's a bad pick, I know, but if I'm picking Burrow, I might pick CJ Uzomah. I did it last week. I picked Wilson and Everett, and I believe that Will Dissly got more targets than Everett. Look, this team does not use the tight end and in the pass game, and that's just a fact. But if I want to separate myself and go with the cheap tight end, there's not a lot of good or even reasonable, like semi-decent tight ends for cheap. So we got CJ Uzomah. If I got Joe Burrow and I stack with Uzomah and maybe like Tyler Boyd or Jamar Chase, any receiver, but maybe Boyd because he wasn't that good week one, I think it's going to really separate my lineup, and I'm just praying for a miracle touchdown. It can happen. I'm sure Uzomah's going to get like 3, 4, 5 touchdowns this year. He's not going to get a lot, but I'm sure he's going to get in the end zone. And 3 catches and a touchdown, that's all I would ask for. He got 5.5 fantasy points last game. Pretty bad, but if we can just get 1 touchdown, 1 more catch, guys, that's going to be about 8 fantasy points, and that would put him at around 13, 14 fantasy points. That would be great for essentially a minimum price tight end. I have some good defense picks for you. I would not recommend spending the absolute minimum and getting the Texans. Don't do that at all. Bucks D is okay. Broncos D is good. Patriots D is very good. 3,700 going against the Jets. Very good defense. They always do good against rookie quarterbacks. Browns D is decent, but who else I have as options? Bills D, Saints D. But my favorite defense this week is going to be the Steelers defense. 3,000 going against the Raiders. Oh boy, you're able to stop the Bills and Josh Allen, phenom quarterback. You shouldn't be able to stop the Raiders. On top of all that, Josh Jacobs is out. I liked what Carr did, but really this team is one wide receiver short of being really good. And that's what the Raiders are. And I'm thinking Derek Carr in Dynasty might be a good buy low option right now, because if they're able to get Devontae Adams next year, they could be unstoppable, man. But right now, they don't have that. They have Henry Ruggs, who's not good. They have Bryan Edwards, who is good. He's kind of coming up. And they have Hunter Renfrow, who's pretty good. And Darren Waller, and that's really it. And, you know, I just don't think they're going to be able to move the ball like they did against the disappointing Ravens. Steelers D, I think Steelers D feasts. I think they've proven that they can feast in any matchup. They just did it against the Bills. 14 points against the Bills. Oh, man, that's 14 fantasy points. So against the Raiders, I mean, that could easily be 17 fantasy points. That's super cheap. But I came to that realization pretty fast. I think other people will too. Hey, we don't have to be super contrarian every week, and we don't have to be contrarian with every single player in our lineup. Other options, just to give you some alternates, is going to be the Cardinals, 2,900 going against the Vikes. We have the Bears, 2,800 going against the Bengals. We have the Dolphins, 2,500 going against the Bills. That's a pretty good one. I think Dolphins is a defense that puts up fantasy points every week, regardless of the matchup. Not great last week, but I was still a little bit impressed. 6 points against the Patriots. Little, gives me a little bit of confidence in the Dolphins. And the Dolphins defense did look good too. Eagles D, 2,400 going against the Niners, in case the Niners, in case there's some kind of upset or something. I'm going Steelers D, I think. And if I might go with the more expensive D just to change it up and not pick the Steelers every time. And the only reason I really, really don't want to consider Steelers D is if I need to go on, like I'm over budget and I need to squeeze in like the Dolphins D or something like that. Well, yeah, there you guys have it. Those are my DFS NFL picks for week 2. Good luck this week, everyone. Make sure you subscribe to both YouTube channels, Fantasy Couch and Fantasy Couch Podcast. We just did a podcast yesterday. Make sure you go check that out. It was a really good one. Had a lot of fun. Talked about a lot of buy low, sell high options that are already seeming to pan out. So make sure you do check out our second channel or subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, pretty much everywhere. All right, guys. See you on the next video.